The prosecutor smirked. The judge barely glanced up. The officers leaned back, waiting for the gavel to drop, expecting another easy conviction. But just before the verdict was read, the defendant did something no one expected. Jabari Ellington had never thought his weekend trip to Birmingham, Alabama, would end with him in handcuffs. He had flown in to give a guest lecture at the University of Alabama. A simple talk about fixing the criminal justice system. It was almost laughable given what was about to happen. It started after dinner. He had just left a small soul food place downtown, where an older couple had recognized him. From a panel he'd been on a few months earlier, they stopped to talk for a while, discussing problems in the system and how much more work still needed to be done. Jabari was used to these talks. What he wasn't used to was what happened next. As he walked toward his rental car, blue and red lights made him stop in his tracks. A patrol car pulled up fast, its tires screeching. "Hands where I can see them." The voice was loud and firm. Jabari barely had time to think before two white officers, both young, jumped out, guns pointed straight at him. "Sir, what's going on?" Jabari asked, his voice steady and his hands up. He had taught students how to handle police stops. He'd studied this from every angle. But knowing something in theory isn't the same as living through it. "Shut up. Turn around." Hands on the car. A third officer stepped out of the patrol car. This one was older, heavier, and wore a smirk that made Jabari feel sick. He watched as one of the younger officers pulled out a small plastic bag, white powder inside. "Well, look at that," the older cop said, chuckling. "What do we have here?" Jabari's body went stiff. Planted drugs. He had read about cases like this, helped fight them in court, and now it was happening to him. "That's not mine," he said, forcing himself to stay calm. "You know that's not mine." The officer tilted his head slightly, amused. "Is that so?" He turned to the other cop. "What do you think, Miller? Think he's telling the truth?" "Not a chance," Miller replied with a grin. "Looks guilty to me." The handcuffs clicked shut around Jabari's wrists. People on the street had started to watch. Some pulled out their phones. But the cops didn't care. They'd done this before. They knew how it would play out. "Please, let me record," a woman began, but the older cop cut her off. "Back up, ma'am, unless you want to be next." Jabari's thoughts were racing. He could fight this, not with force, but with facts. He could ask them to check for fingerprints, review the body cam footage, call a lawyer. But he knew how this game worked. The cameras would be shut off. The evidence would vanish. The charges would stick. So he said nothing. Inside the patrol car, the older cop sat in the front, whistling. "You got family, son?" Jabari didn't answer. The cop kept going, "You all say the same things. I didn't do it. I wasn't doing anything." Same old lines. We could say them in our sleep. The younger officer, Miller, laughed. "Maybe we should bet on what they'll say next." Jabari looked out the window, fists tight. He wanted to tell them who he was. He wanted to see their faces when they realized. But not yet. They thought they had won. They had no clue what was coming. The Jefferson County Courthouse was packed that morning. Reporters, lawyers, even law students had come to watch. It wasn't unusual. Cases like this always drew attention. A black man accused of having drugs, a fast trial, a likely conviction. Jabari sat calmly at the defense table, his hands resting flat. His lawyer, a young and overworked public defender named Brian LeClaire, flipped through his papers. The way he tapped his pen showed how stressed he was. "Listen, man," Brian whispered, leaning close. "I've seen this before. Judge Stokes isn't exactly soft. Your best move is to take the deal." Jabari turned slightly. "What's the deal?" Brian sighed. 5 years. Maybe 3, if you stay quiet and don't stir things up. 3 years, Jabari repeated, his voice calm and smooth. "For something I didn't do?" Brian looked uneasy. "I hear you, but these guys..." He glanced at the prosecution's table. Assistant District Attorney Joel Patterson was chatting with the same officers who arrested Jabari. They were joking around, laughing like it was just another day. They looked relaxed, like they'd done this dozens of times. "You fight this," Brian whispered, "and if you lose, you're looking at 20. Jabari turned his eyes toward the officers. Sergeant Raymond Gibbons, Officer Miller, Officer Denton. They didn't look nervous at all. Sergeant Gibbons caught Jabari's eye and gave a slight smirk, shaking his head just enough to send a silent message. "Don't even try." Jabari took a slow breath. "Let's go to trial." Brian stopped tapping his pen. "You sure?" "I'm sure." Brian hesitated, then gave a small nod. "All right." The judge entered the courtroom. The Honorable Judge Howard Stokes, a man in his 60s, known for handing out fast sentences. He sat down in his chair, adjusted his glasses, and glanced through the file. "Let's make this quick," he muttered. Patterson stood and buttoned his jacket. "Your Honor, the state is ready to proceed. We have strong and clear evidence against the defendant." Jabari tuned him out. He already knew this part by heart. The same speech, the same routine. He had seen it before, in other cities, other courtrooms, used against other people who never had a chance. He could feel everyone's eyes on him, the quiet tension, people waiting for him to give in. The prosecution called their first witness, Officer Denton. Denton straightened his uniform as he stepped up, placing his hand on the Bible before being sworn in. Patterson walked over with confidence. "Officer Denton, let's go over what happened on August 17th. Tell the court how you first came into contact with the defendant." Denton cleared his throat. "We were patrolling near 8th Avenue North, an area known for drug activity. We saw the defendant leaving a restaurant. When he saw us, he changed direction right away, seemed nervous. That's when we decided to stop him." Jabari stayed still. He had expected this story. "And then what happened?" Patterson asked. "During the stop," Denton said, "he didn't cooperate right away. He kept asking unnecessary questions. Eventually, we did a legal search and found a small bag with a controlled substance in his jacket pocket. Let the record show," Patterson said, turning to the jury, "that the substance tested positive for cocaine." There were whispers around the courtroom. Some people shook their heads. Jabari looked at Brian. He didn't even object. His lawyer wasn't really fighting. He was just letting it all happen. Next came Officer Miller. He told the same story, almost word for word. Jabari barely paid attention. Then it was Sergeant Gibbons' turn. Unlike the others, he spoke with confidence, calm and smooth, like he had done this 100 times. "We follow the rules," Gibbons said, leaning forward a bit. "No shortcuts. No breaking protocol. Everything that night was done properly." His voice was steady, but Jabari could hear the fake honesty in it. Patterson nodded. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant Gibbons. No more questions." Brian stood up slowly. Jabari could tell he didn't want to do this, but he had to at least act like he was trying. He cleared his throat. "Sergeant, you said my client, Mr. Ellington, acted suspiciously. Did he run?" "No," Gibbons answered smoothly. "Did he resist?" Gibbons gave a small smile. "Not physically, no. But you still search him based on probable cause?" "Yes." Brian nodded slowly, flipping the pages of his legal pad without reading them. "And the drugs, where exactly were they found?" "In his pocket," Gibbons answered right away. Brian tapped his pen against the table again. No more questions. Jabari took a deep breath. He was watching his own conviction unfold right in front of him. The jury had already made up their minds. The officers looked relaxed. Patterson looked confident, and the judge looked ready to move on. Jabari looked again at Sergeant Gibbons, who now seemed almost amused. They thought it was over. They thought they had won. The air in the courtroom felt heavy, like the decision had been made. Long before Jabari ever walked in, Judge Stokes sighed, flipping through his notes, like someone skimming an article they didn't care to read. The jury sat quietly, faces hard to read. Some had written things down. Others just watched, waiting for the ending they believed was already coming. Patterson stood. "Your Honor, the prosecution rests." Brian stood slowly. The defense has no more witnesses. Your Honor, no witnesses. No real defense. Jabari wasn't surprised. Very well, Judge Stokes muttered. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes before looking toward the jury. We'll move to closing arguments. Patterson didn't wait. He walked toward the jury box with steady steps and a firm voice. Folks, this is simple, he said. You heard the evidence. You heard from 3 trained officers, professionals with years of experience, who risk their lives every day to keep us safe. Then you heard from the defendant, a man who, let's be honest, was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He paused, letting his words settle in. But remember, he continued, his voice quieter now, drugs don't just show up out of nowhere. That cocaine didn't walk into his pocket by itself. And the law, our law, doesn't work based on feelings. It works on facts. He turned and walked back toward his table. And the facts are clear, he said, gesturing at Jabari without even looking at him. You know what to do. Then he sat down, silent. Brian paused before standing. He adjusted his tie, swallowed hard, then walked slowly toward the jury, moving like someone who had already given up. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I know this might seem like a simple case, but I ask you to think about doubt, reasonable doubt. He glanced at the officers, because even though Officer Denton, Officer Miller, and Sergeant Gibbons said what they did, it's important to remember. He trailed off. Someone coughed in the back. Brian cleared his throat. What I mean is, we weren't there. We don't know for sure. And my client, well, he says he's innocent. That was it. That was the defense. Brian gave a quick nod and sat back down. Judge Stokes didn't even try to hide his irritation. All right, the jury will now deliberate. But before he could say more, Sergeant Gibbons smirked. It was fast, barely noticeable, but Jabari caught it. So did others in the courtroom. A smirk, a flash of celebration. They had done this before, and they had always gotten away with it. That's when Jabari decided. It was time, before the judge could finish his sentence. Jabari leaned forward, his voice calm, steady, and in complete control. Your Honor, he said. The judge looked up, annoyed. Mr. Ellington, your lawyer already spoke. I understand. Jabari cut in, his tone polite but firm. But before we go on, I'd like to introduce myself properly. The mood in the room shifted. Jabari stood slowly. A bailiff stepped forward, but Judge Stokes raised his hand. Let him speak. Jabari looked straight at Sergeant Gibbons. You and your team did a thorough job, he said. You made sure the evidence looked solid. You even had help from a friendly defense lawyer to keep things smooth. Gibbons' smirk disappeared. Jabari gave a small nod, like he was impressed. For most people, this would have worked. His voice dropped slightly. But I'm not most people. The room went silent. Jabari reached into the pocket of the same jacket they claimed held drugs and pulled out a leather ID case. He flipped it open. The courtroom gasped. A golden badge. 3 bold letters, FBI. And beneath that, Jabari Ellington, Director. The officers froze. Brian turned pale. Judge Stokes leaned forward, eyes wide. What? He said. Jabari's voice stayed quiet, but it was powerful. I'm Jabari Ellington, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, he said, and I have everything I need to put you exactly where you plan to send me. The room was completely still, the kind of silence where even a whisper feels loud. Then, like glass cracking, someone moved. Judge Stokes pushed his chair back, his face unreadable. His eyes flicked between the badge and Jabari. Excuse me, he began, but Jabari didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. He held the badge up higher for everyone to see. In the back, reporters scrambled to grab their phones. Cameras clicked. Whispers filled the room. Jurors looked at one another, their expressions changing from confusion to realization. And the 3 officers? They weren't smiling anymore. Gibbons sat frozen, his hands gripping the table so tightly. His knuckles turned white. Officer Miller swallowed hard, his Adam's apple jumping. Denton, who had been so confident on the stand, looked like he might throw up. Jabari turned toward the prosecution table. "Mr. Patterson," he said calmly, "would you like to explain how your office handles cases? Build on fake evidence? Or should I continue?" The assistant district attorney blinked. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Jabari stepped forward slowly. "No." "All right." He set the badge down on the defense table. Then he pulled out something else, a small black recorder. He pressed play. A soft beep echoed through the courtroom. Then voices. "You know, it's funny. All you boys got the same story. I didn't do it." Givens' voice, clear as day. Jabari kept his eyes on the sergeant, watching the color drain for his face. We could recite them in our sleep. The recording continued. Every smug word. Every laugh from the police car. When it stopped, the courtroom erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Reporters talking fast. Phones recording. The truth had just exploded, right in front of everyone. Judge Stokes slammed his gavel. "Order. I want order in this courtroom." But it was too late. Jabari looked at Givens, who was breathing hard now, clutching the table, like he could keep the truth from spreading. Jabari took one more step forward. "I have hours of this," he said, his tone calm, almost casual. "Body cam footage, dash cam footage, witness statements." He tilted his head. "You didn't really think I'd walk into this without a plan, did you?" Givens jumped up so fast. His chair fell backward. This is a setup," he shouted. Jabari raised an eyebrow. "You mean like the one you pulled on me?" The words hit hard. Officer Miller went pale. Denton looked toward the exit, sweat running down his face. "Your Honor," Patterson finally found his voice. I don't know what game the defense is playing, but this is highly irregular. You request. Jabari cut him off. "You don't get to request anything." He turned toward the back of the room. 3 men in dark suits had entered quietly, while the room was in chaos. Federal agents. Jabari nodded toward them. "Gentlemen, you know what to do." The agents moved in. Sergeant Givens backed away. "Now, hold on. Raymond Givens," one of the agents said, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for obstruction of justice, perjury, and falsifying evidence." The courtroom exploded again. Reporters stood. Flashes from cameras filled the air. People whispered. Phones held up to capture every moment. Officer Miller tried to slip away, but another agent grabbed his arm and cuffed him on the spot. Denton didn't fight back. He didn't even look surprised. Judge Stokes, still holding his gavel, turned to Jabari. His expression had changed. The usual courtroom pride was gone. You planned this," he said slowly. Jabari looked him straight in the eye. "No, Your Honor. They planned it." He nodded toward the officers in cuffs. "I just didn't play along." For the first time that morning, he smiled. The courtroom had started off as a trap, but now it had become something else. A reckoning. The scene was chaos. The once confident officers were now in handcuffs, their heads down, faces pale. Reporters crowded in, microphones raised, cameras flashing. Jabari stood still, watching it all unfold. Sergeant Givens twisted against the cuffs. "You don't know what you're doing." He yelled at the federal agent. "This is a mistake. I want my lawyer." The agent didn't flinch. "You'll get one in federal court." Officer Miller tried to talk. His voice was shaky. "It wasn't my idea. I was just—" "Save it," the agent said, pulling him away. Denton said nothing. He simply gave a small nod. He knew it was over. The room buzzed with more than just shock. There was understanding now. The jury, who had nearly convicted Jabari, looked at him with new eyes. Judge Stokes slammed the gavel again, but it didn't quiet the room this time. "Enough," he shouted. "This is still my courtroom." Jabari turned toward him. "Not anymore." The judge's body stiffened. "Excuse me?" Jabari picked up his FBI badge and slipped it into his pocket. Your Honor, I suggest you stay seated. This investigation is bigger than just 3 officers. We have enough proof to reopen. Dozens of cases in this courthouse. Cases involving corrupt judges, attorneys. He glanced at Patterson, who suddenly sat up straighter, nervous, and a network of officers who've been working together for years. This isn't just about me. Stokes' face turned red. You. Jabari stepped closer. For the first time, the judge looked nervous. You signed off on hundreds of cases like mine, Jabari said. Didn't you? Quick convictions, no second thoughts. How many innocent people did you send to prison? How many plea deals were forced through because you didn't want to hear the truth? The judge said nothing. Patterson shuffled his papers, trying to look busy, but Jabari turned to him next. And you, he said to the prosecutor, you built your whole career on cases like this. How many times did you look the other way when something didn't make sense? Patterson tried to laugh. Look, I didn't know what these officers were doing. If I had known. Jabari raised his hand. Stop. The word hit like a hammer. You had a choice, he said, stepping closer. You had every chance to do the right thing, to ask questions, to listen, but you didn't. You didn't care, because the system always worked for you. Patterson opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no argument, no defense. Not anymore, Jabari said. A federal agent leaned toward him. Sir, we'll be taking this further. Judge Stokes is now under review. Patterson, too. This is just the beginning. Jabari nodded. Good. He looked around the courtroom one last time. For the first time in his life, the tables had turned. No one saw him as a suspect anymore. Now they saw the truth. The jury lowered their eyes, ashamed. They had almost sent an innocent man to prison. How many others had they done that to? Brian, the defense lawyer, sat stiffly at the table, his hands gripping his files. He had never once asked who Jabari really was. Want my advice? Jabari asked him. Brian hesitated. What? Find a new job. Brian swallowed hard. He knew Jabari was right. The officers were let out, their heads hanging low. Reporters followed close behind, cameras rolling. The truth was out now. Judge Stokes clenched his jaw, but said nothing. Patterson slowly sank into his chair, realizing his career might be finished. Jabari took a deep breath. It was over, and yet it wasn't, because this wasn't just about him. It was about every person who had ever been in his place, every innocent life, destroyed by men like Givens, Miller, and Denton, by judges like Stokes, and prosecutors like Patterson. Jabari picked up his briefcase and walked toward the exit. The whispers behind him grew louder, but he didn't look back, because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Justice isn't about what's written in books. It's about who enforces it. Too many innocent people have been hurt by a system built to break them. Too many officers, too many lawyers and judges hide behind their power, thinking no one will ever stop them. But the truth is, no one is untouchable. The fight for justice doesn't end in the courtroom. It keeps going. In every vote, every protest, every voice that demands the truth. So ask yourself, how many Jabari Ellingtons have there been? How many never got the chance to fight back? The system only changes when people stop being afraid to stand up. If you believe in justice, share this story. Speak out, because silence only protects the guilty. Subscribe for more stories that expose the truth.